Hello, friends. Welcome to Stories by Tochi. We bring you interesting folk tales. Please don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for doing so. Now, let's get into the story. In a secluded hamlet nestled between sweeping savannas and ancient groves, life once flowed with a gentle, predictable rhythm. Mornings arrived with the soft murmur of a distant river and the rustle of palm fronds, while the evenings were imbued with the low, resonant hum of ancestral lullabies. In a modest mud brick dwelling on the village's edge, a tender family of 4 children thrived under the nurturing care of their sole parent, a warm, steadfast soul whose every word was a lesson in kindness, and whose laughter filled the air like the sweet notes of a chorus. Yet on a day that began like any other, fate intervened with an unyielding cruelty. An unforeseen calamity, a sudden, heart-wrenching accident beneath a sky streaked with crimson, snatched away the family's guiding light. In the chaotic moments that followed, the world itself seemed to pause in disbelief. The scent of burning wood mingled with the damp earth, and even the ancient fig tree appeared to bow in solemn tribute as grief and shock permeated every corner of that once joyful home. In the wake of that profound loss, the fabric of their once cohesive life began to unravel. With no safety net to cushion the blow, the relatives, bound by customary obligations and tempered by their own struggles, decided that the children would be scattered to distant households, each unfamiliar with the tender memories of shared secrets and laughter echoing down narrow corridors. The girl, with her wide, questioning eyes and a heart already burdened by sorrow, was placed in a new, austere environment far removed from the gentle cadence of her former life. Here, rigid routines and unspoken expectations replaced the warm spontaneity of familial affection. The walls of her new home, though sturdy and steeped in tradition, could not contain the echo of her loss. Each day unfolded slowly, marked by arduous tasks, from fetching water from a communal well beneath the blazing sun to laboring under the weight of silent admonishments, and every moment served as a stark reminder that the comforting embrace of her lost parent was now a distant, almost mythical memory. As the days melted into weeks and the scar of separation deepened, the girl discovered that survival demanded a delicate blend of resilience and quiet ingenuity. In the bustling market at the heart of her new world, a place alive with the vibrant clash of colors, the tang of exotic spices, and the rhythmic cadence of native drums, she gradually learned the art of barter and the subtle language of trust. With nimble fingers and a determined spirit, she arranged her small collection of handmade trinkets and carefully sourced produce on a worn cloth spread atop a low wooden stall. Each exchanged coin, each whispered thank you, became a fragile step toward reclaiming a semblance of control in an otherwise merciless existence. Amid the lively chatter of traders and the steady pulse of distant folk songs, she found moments of reflective solitude, a chance to sift through memories of love and loss, and to nurture a secret hope that someday the shattered fragments of her early life might be woven into a tapestry of renewal. At the break of day, as a soft haze of light gently unfurled over a bustling town, she stepped onto a narrow, dusty lane that led to the beating heart of commerce. The world here was an intricate tapestry of sounds and colors, a quiet symphony before the full surge of the day. Early vendors arranged their modest wares on time-worn wooden carts and faded cloths, their hands deliberate and slow as they prepared for the coming rush. The air was tinged with the heady aroma of roasted grains and fresh, dew-laden fruits, blending with the earthy scent of sun-baked soil. Each footstep on the cobbled path resonated with a cautious hope, a fragile determination to carve out a place amid the unyielding pulse of trade. The awakening light revealed intricacies that might have been overlooked, a delicate carving on an old market stall, the slow swirl of dust motes dancing in the early rays, and the soft murmur of whispered greetings between vendors and early buyers. In that quiet prelude to chaos, the marketplace seemed to breathe gently, as if aware of her silent arrival, and promising a day filled with both challenge and possibility. As the day advanced, the narrow lanes filled with a mosaic of voices and murmurs, and she began the delicate art of arranging her modest collection of handcrafted items. With care, she spread out her offerings on a faded piece of fabric, positioning each piece so that its vibrant hues caught the light, a humble attempt to mirror the splendor of the world around her. The rhythmic cadence of haggling filled the space, punctuated by the soft laughter of friendly banter and the measured cadence of deliberate negotiations. In this realm of barter and exchange, every interaction was measured, every word weighed with care. She exchanged knowing glances with fellow traders and listened intently to the stories woven between customers, a tale of distant lands told through the worn lines on a man's face, the resilient spirit of a widow conveyed through her warm smile, or the quiet struggle of a laborer whose calloused hands spoke of days filled with silent endurance. With each interaction, she learned subtle lessons in resilience and compromise, her heart absorbing the marketplace's relentless pulse while slowly etching a language of its own, a language that spoke of survival, hope, and a future that might yet be rewritten with each carefully exchanged coin. In the quiet aftermath of the morning's crescendo, as the sun ascended to its zenith and cast intricate patterns upon the ground, she found solace in moments of reflective solitude. Between the fervor of transactions and the constant hum of activity, she would steal brief pauses to observe the ebb and flow of life unfolding before her eyes. There, amid the bustle, she witnessed the silent power of community, an elderly woman tenderly sharing a secret smile with a young vendor, a stray child darting between stalls with a fearless glimmer in his eyes, and even the gentle nod of acknowledgment exchanged between strangers bound by a shared struggle. These instances, though fleeting, filled her with a quiet strength, a belief that beneath the surface of hardship there thrived an unspoken promise of connection and renewal. Slowly, in the measured pace of the marketplace, she began to see herself not merely as a solitary survivor, but as part of a larger, ever-evolving narrative, where each day offered a chance to reclaim fragments of hope, one deliberate, tender moment at a time. In the heart of a sun-dappled square, where the hum of daily life unfolded with measured precision, an unfamiliar presence began to reshape her world. As she arranged her modest wares each morning, her eyes caught sight of a man whose quiet stride and unmistakable air of command seemed to momentarily suspend the clamor of the crowd. Clad in finely tailored garments that shimmered subtly under the relentless African sun, he moved with a deliberate grace that set him apart from the ordinary passers-by. His carriage, a masterpiece of carved wood and gleaming brass, rolled slowly along the well-trodden path, drawing curious glances from market-goers and humble traders alike. There was an intensity in his gaze, a look that spoke of unspoken promises and a destiny far removed from the struggles of everyday existence. In that silent moment, as their eyes briefly met amidst the swirl of colors and voices, an almost imperceptible energy passed between them, as if the fabric of fate had been gently nudged. The encounter left her with a lingering awareness of a possibility that defied the harsh cadence of her current life, hinting at a future where her burdens might finally yield to the light of hope. In the following days, the pulse of her routine began to subtly shift, as if echoing the undercurrent of that fateful encounter. Mornings now carried a certain weight, a mixture of cautious expectation and reflective introspection that made each moment feel both fragile and monumental. She found herself seeking out quiet corners near stately, ancient courtyards where the man was known to converse with elders and scholars about art, tradition, and the evolution of their community. In the gentle hush of early afternoon, beneath the sprawling boughs of an age-old acacia tree, He would speak with deliberate calmness, his voice rich with wisdom and a promise of transformation. It was in these serene interludes that he extended to her an invitation, a proposal wrapped in the language of hope and careful ambition. The offer was not grandiose in its presentation, but carried an unspoken assurance, a chance to escape the relentless cycle of hardship by aligning herself with a patron whose influence could alter the course of her destiny. As she listened, heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and wonder, the notion of stepping onto a new path began to take root. The invitation was delicate, its implications vast. It was a covenant of mutual reliance, where opportunity and obligation intertwined like the intricate patterns of a woven tapestry. That evening, in the soft glow of a single oil lamp within the humble confines of her new shelter, she sat in contemplative solitude, weighing the silent covenant offered to her. The decision loomed large, a crossroads where the yearning for a brighter future met the quiet pull of personal values and the weight of long-standing traditions. Every whispered thought in the quiet darkness carried the gravity of an uncharted journey, a journey that promised both liberation and sacrifice. She imagined the life that might unfold under the patronage of this dignified benefactor, a life where the relentless struggle for survival might finally give way to a steadier, more assured pace. Yet beneath that shimmering promise lay the inevitable cost, a delicate surrender of a piece of herself, a commitment that might forever alter the contours of her relationships and inner world. As she pondered the myriad possibilities, each thought resonated with both hope and hesitancy, weaving a tapestry of dreams tinged with inevitable loss. With every silent heartbeat, she felt the magnitude of the choice before her, a choice that demanded not only the courage to grasp a new future, but also the resilience to honor the remnants of a past that still whispered in every quiet corner of her soul. As the waning light of dusk softened the edges of the day, she was gently led away from the familiar clamor of everyday life toward a secluded compound steeped in quiet mystery. A narrow, unpaved pathway wound through a grove of towering, ancient trees whose leaves murmured in a language older than memory. Each step on the earthen trail resonated with a measured gravity, as if the ground itself acknowledged the weight of what was to come. Before her, an age-worn gate adorned with intricate carvings of ancestral symbols stood as a silent sentinel to forgotten rituals and secret legacies. Beyond it, a circular clearing emerged, bathed in the tender glow of a low-burning fire whose dancing shadows revealed delicate patterns on the soft, compacted soil. The air here was rich with the heady scent of exotic incense and wild, dew-laden herbs, a fragrance that hinted at long-cherished traditions and whispered promises of protection. In this sacred haven, time appeared to decelerate, allowing every rustle of the wind and every heartbeat to contribute to the unfolding narrative of destiny. Within the clearing, a carefully orchestrated array of ritual objects awaited their part in an ancient ceremony. At its center lay a hand-woven cloth, its surface adorned with luminous symbols that seemed to capture the very essence of the night's mysteries. Arrayed around it were small, meaningful tokens, a collection of charms forged from bone and metal, clusters of vibrant herbs, and strands of beads imbued with the energy of forgotten lore. A venerable elder, his presence imbued with the wisdom of countless seasons, moved with deliberate grace among these sacred relics. His deep, measured voice began to murmur incantations in an archaic tongue, each syllable carrying the resonance of time immemorial. With gentle precision, he selected a handful of aromatic herbs, pressing them into a humble earthen bowl, releasing a fragrant mist that intertwined with the cool night air. Then, with a soft yet unwavering authority, he extended his hand, inviting her to receive an exquisitely crafted charm, a physical emblem of the covenant she was about to embrace. As his weathered fingers delicately secured the charm around her wrist, the symbolic act unfolded slowly and deliberately, marking the moment when her fate was interwoven with the ancient, unseen currents of magic and destiny. In the stillness that followed, as the fire's glow diminished to tender embers and the symphony of nocturnal whispers enveloped the clearing, she retreated into the quiet recesses of her own thoughts. The charm, now a living reminder against her skin, pulsed with a subtle energy, a constant testament to the promise sealed in the ritual. Alone under a sky dusted with countless stars, she found herself adrift in a delicate interplay of emotions. The spark of newfound hope mingled with the chill of uncertainty, and an inner resolve began to stir against the backdrop of lingering trepidation. Every echo of the incantations, every deliberate gesture of the elder, reverberated within her, urging her to accept the mantle of destiny that had been placed upon her shoulder. In that contemplative solitude, she sensed that her life had irrevocably shifted, a transformation woven from threads of ancient magic, solemn vows, and a deep, unspoken trust in the timeless power of tradition. With a quiet, resolute heartbeat, she acknowledged that the path ahead was as enigmatic as it was promising, and silently vowed to honor the sacred bond that now defined her future. At the break of a cool, dew-kissed morning, she awoke to a stillness that seemed to hold the promise of transformation. The night's ritual had faded into a gentle memory, leaving behind an inexplicable warmth that pulsed along her wrist, a constant, quiet reminder of an ancient vow. As she stepped outside into the soft light of dawn, every breath carried with it the scent of damp earth and wild blossoms, stirring something deep within her. The world appeared to have shifted subtly overnight, as if the very air had been cleansed of past sorrows. In the gentle rustle of the wind through tender grass and the slow, deliberate rise of the sun above a distant ridge, she sensed the stirring of hope. With cautious steps along a meandering path bordered by clusters of flowering acacias, she allowed her thoughts to wander freely. The memories of a turbulent past, of loss and relentless hardship, seemed to dissolve into the quiet murmur of nature, replaced by an unspoken invitation to embrace a future unburdened by old grief. Every heartbeat echoed a new rhythm, one that promised both freedom and renewal, as if the universe itself was conspiring to guide her toward a life that had once been unimaginable. In the tranquil hours that followed, she found herself drawn to a small, meandering stream that wound its way through a sunlit glade. The gentle babbling of water over smooth stones offered a serene counterpoint to the quiet clamor of her internal reflections. Pausing at the stream's edge, she knelt to observe the clear, shifting currents that reflected the pastel hues of the awakening sky. Here, in this untouched sanctuary, she allowed herself to feel both the weight of her past and the tentative lightness of her emerging liberation. A weathered bench beneath a sprawling fig tree became her haven for silent contemplation, where she unfurled a worn journal and began to inscribe her innermost thoughts. With each careful stroke of her pen, she charted the contours of her dreams, slowly sketching out a future that mingled the wisdom of ancient rites with the promise of new beginnings. The murmur of the stream, the caress of a mild breeze, and the soft rustling of leaves formed a delicate symphony, a steady reminder that every ending nurtures the seed of a new start, urging her to trust the unfolding journey. As the day matured into a gentle afternoon, she ventured further along a winding trail that led to a clearing crowned by a solitary baobab. Here, in the dappled light beneath its vast, protective canopy, she encountered a small gathering of villagers engaged in quiet, purposeful conversation. Their expressions radiated calm acceptance and shared resilience, a silent invitation to join a community that, like herself, was learning to redefine its destiny. In their eyes, she saw reflections of her own unspoken longing for freedom, a desire to transform pain into strength and solitude into a collective embrace. Seated among them on cool, weathered earth, she listened intently as stories of hardship and healing were exchanged in soft, measured tones. Each tale was recounted with deliberate care, as though every word were a precious gem in the mosaic of their lives. In that unhurried communion, she began to realize that liberation was not found solely in escape from past chains, but in the deliberate act of building a future with those who shared a common understanding of life's intricate challenges. As the shadows lengthened and the last light of day danced upon the faces around her, a quiet resolve took root, an affirmation that in the measured cadence of each new moment she had discovered the first true glimpse of a life reimagined. Dawn broke with an unusual hush over the land, as if the cosmos itself had chosen this day to reveal a secret meant solely for her. The early light, soft and unhurried, bathed her modest room in a gentle glow that stirred something deep within. Rising from her thin cot, she felt the cool, unaccustomed caress of morning air, a quiet reminder that change was already in motion. The charm at her wrist, its intricate patterns catching the tender gleam of sunrise, pulsed in a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. In the reflective surface of a small brass mirror, she beheld a face both familiar and subtly altered. Shadows in the corners of her eyes hinted at mysteries unfathomed and at destiny beyond simple survival. With each careful step toward the doorway, she sensed an awakening of inner faculties, a growing awareness of delicate forces that vibrated at the very edge of human perception. There, in that silent, liminal hour, the world around her whispered of realms unseen, and the covenant she had accepted seemed to invite her to explore a deeper connection with the hidden pulse of the universe. In the quiet solitude of early afternoon, when the sun's heat mellowed into a warm embrace, she sought refuge beneath an ancient baobab, whose weathered trunk stood as a guardian of bygone eras. Here, in the tender interplay of light and shadow beneath the sprawling branches, she allowed herself to linger in introspection. The murmur of a gentle breeze seemed to carry echoes of voices long silenced, an intimate chorus of ancestral wisdom speaking in a language beyond words. With deliberate care, she traced the delicate carvings on the charm, as though seeking to unlock the secrets etched into its very form. Each groove and swirl evoked an enigmatic narrative, a silent lore passed down through countless generations. In that suspended moment beneath the tree, the subtle rustling of leaves merged with the soft cadence of her thoughts, and she began to perceive that the charm was more than a symbol. It was an interface between her present and a realm of quiet, pervasive magic. The natural world around her hummed with an energy that felt both comforting and formidable, urging her to listen closely to the unspoken promises woven into the fabric of the earth. As twilight unfurled its indigo veil over the horizon, she wandered along a narrow path that meandered through a grove of whispering acacias, each step measured and steeped in reflection. The sun's final rays painted the sky in muted golds and deepening purples, while the long shadows on the ground seemed to stretch in a silent dance with the approaching night. In that slow, deliberate descent into darkness, every sound, the soft crunch of dry earth underfoot, the distant call of a nocturnal bird, the rustle of acacia fronds, became a note in the symphony of her evolving destiny. The charm, ever present and quietly insistent, throbbed with a subtle, almost imperceptible hum that resonated with the ancient cadence of the land. Lost in thought, she considered the gravity of the bond she now carried, its promise of both transformation and inevitable sacrifice. The interplay of fading light and emerging shadows mirrored the intricate balance within her spirit, a delicate mingling of hope, trepidation, and the steady resolve to embrace the unknown. Beneath a sky now freckled with the first timid stars, she pressed onward, each step an affirmation of her willingness to navigate the mysterious corridors of fate, accepting that every new dawn might bring with it both liberation and the quiet weight of a promise that could never be undone. In the quiet aftermath of days filled with a persistent internal dissonance, she began to perceive a subtle but insistent fracture within herself, a split between the gentle enchantment of the past and an emerging, uncharted yearning. The charm that had once whispered promises of protection now pulsed with a force that both comforted and alarmed her. Its intricate patterns seemed to shimmer with a hidden dialect of fate. Each morning, as light crept slowly over the horizon, she found that the soft caress of dawn was tinged with a weightier introspection. Sitting by a still pond whose surface reflected muted skies, she would trace the delicate curves etched on her wrist, contemplating the price of the ancient vow. Her thoughts meandered like the gentle ripples across the water, exploring memories of tender hope intertwined with the quiet dread of unyielding destiny. In those reflective moments, the disquiet of the covenant mingled with the stirrings of her own desires, creating an inner dialogue that challenged the silent edicts of tradition. With each measured heartbeat, the balance between the legacy imposed upon her and the subtle whispers of her personal dreams grew ever more precarious, demanding a reckoning that was both inevitable and profound. A turning point unfurled one languid afternoon amid the soft hum of village life, a moment when an unexpected presence stepped quietly into her orbit. He appeared not with ostentation, but as a gentle counterpoint to the rigid cadence of her days, a young man whose eyes mirrored a calm resilience and carried the unspoken promise of understanding. Their meeting was gradual, like the slow unfolding of a flower in the sun, as they wandered along a narrow lane, bordered by clusters of jacaranda trees and time-worn stones, warmed by the afternoon glow. In their cautious exchanges, each word was measured, and every shared silence became a subtle challenge to the bonds that had long dictated her existence. He listened intently as she offered carefully chosen fragments of her inner world, whispers of sorrow interlaced with the fragile buds of hope. Together, amid the muted colors of a village in repose, an unspoken intimacy began to bloom. This nascent connection, both tender and quietly defiant, hinted at the possibility of liberating her from the constricting hold of an ancient promise, inviting her to embrace a future redefined by her own terms, rather than by an age-old decree. As dusk gradually surrendered to the velvet embrace of night, the intensity of their communion deepened into a charged, yet vulnerable, defiance. In a secluded courtyard lit solely by the soft glow of a solitary lantern, his gentle touch stirred within her a tempest of conflicting sensations, a passionate longing that danced perilously close to the forbidden. Every tender caress, every hushed confession, was a delicate act of rebellion, unweaving the intricate tapestry of a vow that had bound her for so long. The interplay of warmth and trepidation in that quiet space rendered time almost immobile, as if the universe itself awaited the consequences of her emerging defiance. In that intimate moment, she sensed that each act of rediscovery bore an inherent risk, an inevitable unraveling of the old ways that could rewrite her destiny in unforeseen ways. The night's murmurs, the soft rustling of nearby leaves, and the distant echo of drums became the silent witnesses to her internal struggle. Standing at the precipice of an unknown future, she realized that reclaiming her own desires meant confronting not only the legacy of ancient bonds, but also the inevitable reverberations of a promise long taken for granted, a truth that would shape her journey into realms of both transcendent passion and profound consequence. In the soft, pre-dawn gloom, as the first fragile light crept over the horizon, an unfamiliar heaviness began to settle in her heart, a subtle yet persistent reminder that something sacred had been disturbed. Wandering along a quiet, meandering path far from the bustle of the market, she sensed an odd dissonance in the natural order. The gentle murmur of the waking earth now carried an undertone of sorrow, as if the very soil lamented a broken promise. A delicate fragrance, once reminiscent of rain-soaked earth and blooming marigolds, had become tainted by a faint, inexplicable odor that clung to her skin. This odor, like a whisper from a long-forgotten curse, made its presence known in every quiet moment, stirring in her a dread she could neither name nor escape. As she paused before a cluster of ancient stones, silent sentinels that had witnessed countless generations, the shifting atmosphere pressed in around her, urging her to confront the cost of the choices that had unraveled the tapestry of her past. As the day advanced with a languid, almost sorrowful pace, The consequences of that quiet transgression grew ever more tangible. In the mirror's reflection, her eyes now betrayed a weariness that no simple fatigue could explain, a glimmer of haunting regret intermingled with a subtle, spectral luminescence. The villagers, once kindly and soft-spoken, now regarded her with furtive looks and murmured superstitions, their whispers weaving through the narrow streets like threads of caution. Each interaction, every shared glance, carried the weight of unspoken judgment, a reminder that the invisible balance of tradition had been upset. In moments of solitude, when the world fell silent and the rustling of leaves became the only conversation, the cadence of ancient incantations echoed faintly in her ears. It was as if the breach of her long-held sacred bond had not only marred her spirit, but also unsettled the deep, abiding rhythms of life that had once nurtured her sense of belonging. As twilight deepened into a profound, velvety night, she found herself isolated in a cocoon of reflective despair, her soul trembling under the burden of unresolved transgression. In the dim glow of a solitary lantern, she clutched the charm, a token that had transformed from a symbol of protection into an unyielding reminder of her fall from grace. The silence around her was thick with the murmur of unseen voices, and the very air seemed to carry an ancient, mournful lament for what had been lost. Driven by a desperate yearning for absolution, she resolved to seek out a reclusive healer known to dwell in the far reaches of a forgotten woodland, a place where the wisdom of ancestral lore might still mend a fractured destiny. Under the gnarled boughs of time-worn trees, and amidst the quiet rustle of leaves that whispered secrets of redemption, she began to gather fragments of hope. In that measured, deliberate quest for healing, each step was a slow act of defiance against the relentless tide of fate, a fragile promise that perhaps, with patience and resolve, the intricate knots of a broken oath could someday be unwound and a new beginning gently coaxed into being. The night stretched endlessly before her, its silence punctuated only by the distant cries of unseen creatures and the occasional rustling of the wind through the canopy of gnarled trees. Wrapped in the hesitant embrace of darkness, she moved carefully along the narrow, overgrown path that led deep into the heart of the forgotten woodland. Each step was measured, her bare feet pressing into the damp earth, the cool soil offering fleeting solace from the feverish heat that clung to her skin. The unseen weight of her transgression bore down upon her, thick as the mist curling through the low-hanging branches. Shadows twisted and elongated beneath the moon's pale watchfulness, stretching across the ground like silent reminders of the vows she had unraveled. Yet, despite the quiet dread tightening around her chest, she pressed forward, drawn toward the hope that somewhere beyond the veil of darkness lay the possibility of redemption. Somewhere in this forsaken place, the healer awaited, one who understood the language of ancient covenants, one who might offer a path back from the abyss she had unknowingly stepped into. The deeper she ventured, the more the world around her shifted, as if she had crossed an invisible threshold separating the known from the forgotten. Here, the trees were older, their gnarled trunks thick with whispers of long-buried secrets. The air, once crisp and cool, had grown heavy with a dampness that clung to her skin, each breath thick with the scent of moss, earth, and something more elusive, something that smelled of memory itself. Strange markings, etched into the bark of ancient trees, seemed to glow faintly in the dim moonlight, their symbols unfamiliar yet oddly resonant. She traced them with trembling fingers, feeling a pulse of energy beneath the rough surface, as if the very forest watched her, measured her, judged her. A low murmur, neither the wind nor an earthly voice, rippled through the foliage, carrying with it a fragmented melody that wove itself into her thoughts. It was neither welcoming nor hostile, merely observant, like the unseen eyes she felt lingering at the edges of her vision. And then, as if answering an unspoken summons, she glimpsed it, a flickering light, barely visible through the dense undergrowth. It was not the warm glow of a fire, nor the reassuring gleam of a lantern, but something older, something alive. With renewed urgency, she followed its spectral glow, knowing that whatever lay ahead would demand more of her than mere repentance. At the end of the winding path, nestled within a grove where the trees grew impossibly tall, she found the dwelling of the one she sought. It was neither a hut nor a temple, but something in between, a place that seemed to have been shaped by the land itself rather than built by human hands. Its walls were woven from the very roots of the forest, its roof a lattice of thick, intertwining vines. And there, seated at its threshold, was the healer, an elder whose face bore the weight of countless years, yet whose eyes gleamed with an unsettling sharpness, as if they could see beyond flesh, beyond bone, into the very marrow of one's soul. Without a word, they beckoned her forward, and as she knelt before them, the charm at her wrist pulsed once, an echo of the vow she had broken, a final acknowledgment of the irreversible step she had taken. The elder placed a gnarled hand over her trembling one, their touch neither warm nor cold, neither kind nor cruel. And in that moment, as the air thickened with the scent of burning herbs, and the low hum of incantations filled the hollow night, she understood. Absolution was never freely given, it had to be earned, carved from the very fabric of the soul, and paid for in ways she had yet to comprehend. The air inside the healer's dwelling was thick with the scent of smoldering herbs, a mixture of crushed roots and dried leaves that sent twisting ribbons of smoke into the dim space. Shadows danced along the earthen walls, elongated by the flickering glow of oil lamps that sputtered with an unseen rhythm. She knelt before the elder, her heart pounding against her ribs, the weight of her transgression pressing into her bones like an unrelenting force. The charm at her wrist, once a symbol of protection, now pulsed with something deeper, an unspoken warning, a reminder that no bond was severed without consequence. The healer's eyes bore into her, dark and knowing, as if they could unravel every secret, every regret, every moment of weakness that had brought her to this place. Without a word, the elder reached into a carved wooden bowl beside them and retrieved a handful of ochre-colored powder, their movements deliberate and unhurried. A fine mist rose as they sifted it through their fingers, murmuring words in a language older than memory itself. The sound of it settled deep within her, resonating with the part of her soul that had been bound by the unseen forces she had once willingly accepted. The healer's hands, weathered by time, moved with careful precision as they traced ancient symbols along her arms, her forehead, the hollow of her throat. Each stroke of the ochre paste sent a shiver through her, as if something inside her was being unraveled, thread by thread. A deep, rhythmic chanting filled the space, the sound vibrating through the very ground beneath her. The fire in the corner crackled in response, its embers glowing brighter, casting eerie shadows that flickered like restless spirits. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the strange pull of the ritual, feeling the energy shift around her. At first, it was subtle, a tingling beneath her skin, a slow hum in her bones, but then it intensified, spreading through her limbs like fire coursing through dry grass. A sharp pain bloomed in her chest, forcing her breath to hitch, and then, in an instant, the air around her shattered. She gasped as unseen forces surged through her, twisting and writhing, like 1,000 hands grasping at her very essence. The charm at her wrist burned hot, its pulse erratic, resisting the severance that was being forced upon it. She felt herself caught between two realms, the weight of her past clashing violently with the fragile hope of her future. The elder's voice rose, commanding, unwavering, pushing against the unseen bindings that had once tethered her to an oath she no longer wished to bear. And then, as suddenly as it began, the storm within her ceased. The weight lifted, leaving her gasping, her body trembling from the force of the unseen battle waged upon her soul. The air was still now, heavy with the remnants of ancient power. She opened her eyes to find the elder watching her, their gaze unreadable, their hands still pressed firmly over hers. A moment of silence stretched between them before the elder finally spoke, soft, measured words that carried the weight of unspoken truths. "You have been unbound," they said, their voice barely more than a whisper, "but the scars of broken oaths do not fade easily." She understood then that redemption was not an end, but a beginning, a path that she would have to walk with the knowledge that the past could never truly be erased. Rising on unsteady legs, she stepped out of the dwelling and into the waiting night. The wind was different now, gentler, as if it, too, had been freed. She took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and moonlit leaves filling her lungs, and for the first time in a long while she felt something close to hope. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with shadows yet to be faced, but as she walked into the embrace of the darkened forest, she carried with her the quiet certainty that she had reclaimed herself, piece by piece, breath by breath, step by step. Hope you enjoyed this interesting story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. See you again in my next story.